Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
Hello again, everyone, and thanks for joining us for Sunday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm Dave Percy, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service. And yesterday's imagery showed clouds to the south here gathering, all shifting up to the north and northwest, associated with a pretty active front that was moving into the area, had a break in advance of that, moving northward with some high stuff up there over the north. A lot of snow showers out here over the western Aleutians. And today, several impulses of moisture. This is mostly high clouds rolling up through the northern interior, another band right through here, and then the main front with the precipitation and the wind coming up right along the coast here, kind of hanging up along the southeast coast with most of the precipitation right along the coastal areas there, and amounts pretty light compared to what fell here across the North Gulf Coast and in towards western Prince William Sound, the Kenai Peninsula area. We had rain becoming more showery here, or rain and snow showers there for Kodiak Island, showers back across the Alaska Peninsula. And on the chart today, there's that front, lifting northward, and that's what brought all the rain and snow, depending upon the time of day, your elevation, and where you were, whether it fell as rain or snow. But the main front now coming through late this afternoon up across northern Cook Inlet with some gusty winds here with this 987 millibar low pulling up across western Cook Inlet and along the western Alaska Range. The front trailing back along the North Gulf Coast and down across the Panhandle, some light amounts of rain along the coastal areas there, with the main part pushing in mostly across the Queen Charlottes and on down to the south. Another trough again bringing some rain and snow showers into Kodiak Island, and the main low here coming just across the Alaska Peninsula at about 982 millibars. Kept it kind of showery across the peninsula, rain and snow showers today over the eastern Aleutians, and some pretty gusty winds as high as 45 miles an hour at Point Lay, blowing out of the east-northeast, coming through the Bering Strait. Tin City about the same with 45 miles an hour, but those diminished to about 10 to 20 there across St. Lawrence Island. Areas of light snow and flurries from the western Seward Peninsula area there across western St. Lawrence Island, all the way down to the Pribilofs with some light snow and fog today. Otherwise scattered snow showers out over the eastern Aleutians, mostly the southern Bering Sea, and kind of a break ahead of the next system off to the west there. But pretty good storm force winds ahead of this front as it moved up, with Middleton Island seeing easterly winds gusting at about 70 miles per hour. Cordova seeing winds gust up to about 60 miles an hour. And Portage Valley had gusts over 70 miles per hour today, and one of the heavier rainfall amounts since midnight. Portage picked up nearly 5 inches of rain. By comparison, today Seward had about 1.5 inches of rain and over 1 inch falling down at Homer. Yakutat just under 1/2 inch during the day today, and much lighter amounts along the southeast coast. For tonight, that front dissipates, lifts northward with some areas of snow showers up to about the Alaska Range. Nothing really getting into the Tanana Valley, although there could be some flurries up around the Eagle area, and then some moisture lifting northward here across the Kobuk Valley. Could be some light snow over the Koyukuk Valley, but the heavier amounts will be back across the Kobuk Valley on up into the western Brooks Range, especially the southern slopes of the area there, and back across the northwest coast with that low pulling up into the area there. Another low down here keeping showers going across the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta area, even Bristol Bay. Still kind of showery and breezy there over Kodiak Island, but the precipitation diminishing, tapering off, becoming more showery tonight, this evening and tonight, with pretty brisk southeast winds, 20 to 40 miles an hour, the higher gusts along the higher elevations. And this front weakening and pushing eastward, bringing a chance of some moisture into the eastern areas while it dries out along the coast. And for tomorrow, still rain and snow showers in the forecast here along the North Gulf Coast. Scattered showers up over the northern panhandle, but under high pressure, the southern areas will probably be partly to mostly sunny with light winds down in that area. Look for a few flurries and snow showers again along and south of the Alaska Range, but pretty dry, especially up over the upper Yukon Valley area into the Tanana Valley. Just some variable clouds. Another trough keeping a chance of snow showers out here in the west, diminishing snow showers down toward Bristol Bay, and still southeast flow, rain and snow showers, a good possibility at times tomorrow for the Alaska Peninsula. Over to the eastern Aleutians again. Just a risk of a shower for the Pribilofs with light winds. And then that area of moisture here over in the northwest diminishes to showers tomorrow throughout the day, and even those taper off by the afternoon as the main band of moisture jumps the Brooks Range there and moves out to the Arctic coast for some light snow and fog in those areas. And the next storm out here bringing gale force winds, rain and snow into the western and then central Aleutians in those areas out there. And then for the Tuesday outlook, you'll see that thing actually drops southward. Another system comes northward here. So northeast winds out across just about all of the Bering Sea here from the northeast, with scattered showers becoming a little more numerous out toward the western and central Aleutian areas toward that trough. And this front bringing storm force winds into Kodiak Island, gusts of 65 miles an hour, rain heavy at times. Rain and wind increasing throughout the day up along the North Gulf Coast areas, Shelikof Strait on into Cook Inlet, with the chance of rain reaching up into western Prince William Sound. A very familiar pattern here with the moisture again, mostly west of Cook Inlet along the eastern slopes of the western Alaska Range, but pretty light tomorrow or for Tuesday. The interior, though, partly to mostly sunny conditions up over the upper Yukon, Tanana Valley areas. Could be a few flurries from the Koyukuk Valley on over to maybe Selawik and to the northwest a little bit. Mostly dry, some clouds along the north slope, but pretty light winds here for the Arctic coast on Tuesday. Very little gradient there, even pretty light winds extending down through the Bering Strait to St. Lawrence Island, and then increasing here with some good gales, actually storm force easterlies for Bristol Bay on Tuesday and along the Alaska Peninsula. Gales in the forecast here for the North Gulf Coast, so those winds will be increasing to storm force actually by the late afternoon on Tuesday. Otherwise, the southeast coast here, partly to mostly sunny with dry conditions, definitely, with a little bit breezy conditions, but nothing too terribly strong. Otherwise, temperatures down that way today. We're in the 40s there across all of the Panhandle, with 46 at Metlakatla, Wrangell, and up at Juneau, 41 in Yakutat, 39 both in Cordova and Valdez this afternoon, with a 29-degree reading in Gulkana, 43 in Anchorage before the front finally shifted northward and the snow showers dropped the temperature a good 10 degrees this afternoon, 32 down in Kenai, 35 in Homer, around 40 there for Kodiak Island. Up to the north here, that 52-degree reading occurred at Healy with some downsloping winds there, 46 at McKinley Park and or Denali Park, with 28 degrees in Fairbanks, cooler 19 over at Tanana. Eagle up to 37, but 16 at Fort Yukon, 27 at Bettles, 12 degrees at Anatuvik, and temperature across the north slope in the Arctic coast below zero with -7 and fog. Reduced the visibility there at Barrow to less than a mile at times earlier today. 17 below at Dead Horse, -12 Wainwright and Point Lay to -2 at Cape Lisburne. Teens here over the northwest interior and the Seward Peninsula. 2 degrees at Tin City, just 3 degrees at Gamble this afternoon. Teens and 20s here over the southwest, ranging from 23 at McGrath to 20 there at Bethel, 16 at St. Mary's, and a 21 at Macoriac. Out in the Bering Sea, 28 both at St. Paul and St. George, 26 out there at Shimia, and mid-30s here for the central Aleutians, eastern Aleutians, 30s for the Alaska Peninsula on up into Bristol Bay. Lows for tonight in the 30s for the Panhandle and the North Gulf Coast, upper 20s to lower 30s here for south central Alaska, upper 20s and 30s, Kodiak Island, Bristol Bay, and the Alaska Peninsula, 20s for the Aleutians and the Pribilofs, and still pretty chilly here, dropping to just above 0 there for St. Lawrence Island, staying below 0 along the north slope in the Arctic coast, but teens and single numbers here across the Brooks Range in the upper Yukon Valley. Highs for tomorrow coming a little above 0 there across much of the Arctic coast and even the north slope into the teens and 20s here for the Brooks Range. Mid-20s to lower 30s there across the interior valley areas with lower to mid-30s across south central Alaska, upper 30s, Bristol Bay and the Alaska Peninsula, 30s for the Aleutians, and mid-40s for the most part across the southeast coast. Flying weather shows some IFR lifting northward into the northern Panhandle, but conditions improving down here to the south, starting out with maybe some marginal VFR conditions. That'll be coming VFR, especially across just about all of the southern areas tomorrow afternoon. IFR, western Kodiak Island, down along the southern coast of the Alaska Peninsula, with IFR again, western Cook Inlet and the east side of the western Alaska Range, with a pretty good swath of IFR out here from Nunivak Island up across the Yukon Delta and much of the Seward Peninsula and along all of the Arctic coast, and some IFR also with that next system coming into the central Aleutians. For passes, Anaktuvik, marginal VFR becoming VFR tomorrow afternoon. Same pattern for Adigan as well, marginal conditions improving throughout the day. Lake Clark and Merrill, marginal VFR, possible IFR in the eastern approaches, better conditions out west, rainy, same thing, maybe some IFR on the eastern entrance, but possible IFR on that west side. For rainy, lowest conditions will be on the southern entrance, could possibly result in some marginal VFR there. Isabel, occasionally marginal. Mentasta, though, VFR the entire day. Tanita, maybe marginal on the eastern side, otherwise VFR. And for Portage, look for a gradual improvement. Starting out IFR, could become marginal in the later afternoon hours. For Chilkoot and White, marginal VFR looks like becoming IFR in the afternoon, or trending toward IFR. Freezing levels late tonight, early tomorrow morning at the surface here, right around Adak and Atka, up into south central Alaska, then down the southeast coast, 2,000 feet up along and just off the Panhandle there. For tomorrow, icing, scattered areas, possible scattered areas of light to very isolated moderate rime or mixed icing here, North Gulf Coast, south central Alaska, back off to the northwest, maybe the Seward Peninsula areas, and then back down toward the Kilburk Mountains. And then, of course, with that next system, some icing tending to increase there over the west central Aleutians. And looking at the upper level wind flow chart, the main jet again well to the south here, coming down around this system and then ridging right through this area, extending up across the Yukon there. So south to north flow here at 33,000 feet across much of Alaska, up to 100 knots about around Kodiak Island. This system is the one that will be lifting northwestward and bringing the storm force winds back into the Gulf of Alaska, Kodiak Island, and even Bristol Bay and the Alaska Peninsula on Tuesday. But for tomorrow, 9,000 foot winds, pretty light here over the Panhandle under high pressure. Southerlies 20 to 25 knots into the interior, and then these winds increasing again out over the western Aleutians. Pretty much the same pattern at 3,000 feet. Light winds, high pressure here for the southeast coast. Southerlies 10 to 20, even 25 knots over the interior. And that low lifting northward there, pretty light winds along the Arctic coast and north slope, and then easterlies 30 to 50 knots here out over the Aleutians and into the southern Bering Sea, but lighter over on Alaska and the peninsula. And for turbulence, could be a little bit of light to isolated moderate chop, Bristol Bay, the peninsula, Kodiak Island northward, also over the Copper River Basin and the Alaska Range there up to the eastern Brooks Range, but the heavier stuff will be out here to the west across the Aleutians. After the break, I'll be back with a look at the marine forecasts.
Like most people, Dennis Beam and his daughter Kelly weren't worried about the cold the night their car slid into a ditch in the middle of a blizzard.
I wasn't really too concerned. I'd been stuck before and it wasn't all that deep. But the wind kept picking up and the storm just didn't let up. I was getting wet trying to get the car out, but it was no good, so I decided to wait. About 9 that morning, we'd been stuck about 4 hours. Storm wasn't stopping at all, and we were really getting cold. I figured nothing was going to happen up there on a country road. No help, period. So I decided to go for help. You stay warm and you stay in the car no matter what, okay?
Okay.
Everything's going to be okay. I love you.
Love you too.
Okay, now you be good. Right there. Right there, okay?
I didn't want to be left alone, but Dad said he'd be back for me. He promised.
Leaving Kelly was like leaving my heart behind, and I didn't know when I'd get it back. I couldn't see a thing. It was freezing. My eyes were frozen shut. I had ice all over my feet, but I had to keep going. There was nothing else to do.
Help! Please, this is Kelly B. We had a CB radio in the car, so I tried to call for help. Help! But no one answered. I kept wondering where Daddy was. Can you hear me?
It took me 3 hours to get to a house, and it was literally my last ounce of energy. My feet were black, parts of my face were frozen, but that wasn't my main concern. Kelly was still in that car, and the police said they couldn't get to her until the storm stopped, and there was nothing I could do.
After it got dark, I didn't know what had happened. I couldn't stop thinking about Dad. I had 3 pieces of candy, but I wanted to save them for Dad because I thought he'd be hungry when he came back.
After 10 hours, I didn't know what to think. She'd been alone so long. There was a lot of worry time then. Yeah, a lot of thinking time. Kelly's okay. I think I had to leave her in the car.
Sometimes in the car, I dream that Daddy might not come back.
About 1 the next morning, the storm broke, and the police headed off to get Kelly.
Have you heard anything?
Nothing yet. All I could think was that after 19 hours, who knows, she'd been there so long with no heat. I kept hoping I'd put enough emphasis on staying in that car until I got back.
When the rescuers came, I asked if Dad was okay. He said yeah. I was glad, because it was all over and Dad was okay.
It's for you?
Yes. Thank God. And then the call came. She was okay. My whole world lit up then. Oh, thank God. Thank you very much. Yes. Okay. She's okay.
Kelly suffered only mild symptoms of hypothermia. As the snow buried the car, it insulated and protected her from the severe cold and high wind. Dennis was badly frostbitten because of his walk through the snow. Which of the two had been in the most danger? Without a doubt, Dennis. As soon as he left the car, he put himself in tremendous jeopardy. Neither father or daughter were well prepared for the extreme weather conditions they encountered. A few carefully chosen items would have given them the extra margin of safety they needed. One blanket wasn't enough. Sleeping bags would have been better. Extra clothing would have been extremely welcome after Dennis got wet. Matches and candles. A flashlight with extra batteries. Signal flares. High-calorie, non-perishable food. A shovel and a sack of sand, ashes, or even kitty litter. And a first aid kit. These are examples of items you need. Winter travel is serious business, and you must be prepared for it. Your car should be in good working order. Know the route you plan to take, and tell somebody else where you're going and when you plan to arrive. Check the latest weather information before you leave. The National Weather Service provides up-to-the-minute weather forecasts and can predict most severe storms. If the people in our next story had listened to the weather forecast, they would be alive today. Traveling back to school, 2 students drove directly into a severe winter storm. They had a 4-wheel drive vehicle and were sure they could get through. First, they came upon a roadblock warning travelers to pull off the highway. They went around it. Several miles further, they got stuck in a large snowdrift directly under a bridge. They tried to dig out, but it was hopeless. Soaking wet, they changed clothes. Stuck in the snowdrift, isolated from help, they decided to sit it out. Wait until someone came along and found them. The next morning, someone did. They were dead. They had made two fatal mistakes. One, traveling in the face of deteriorating weather conditions. And two, ignoring a police roadblock. Ironically, it appeared that after they got stuck, they did everything right. They started the car every so often to keep warm. They changed into dry clothing after getting wet trying to dig out. And they didn't abandon their car. However, stuck under the bridge, the wind trapped fatal carbon monoxide fumes around and inside the car. A freak accident? Maybe. But they really died because they didn't use common sense. After those first two mistakes, every other decision only compounded their danger. Ed and Paul Milewski, Dennis and Kelly Beam could have been winter storm fatalities. The two students were. Being prepared for winter emergencies will always better your odds in a snowstorm. So will using good judgment and common sense. These guidelines, if you get caught in a severe snowstorm, will help you survive the cold.
Welcome back. Southerly winds at about 15 knots, so really lightening up here to southeast 15 on the north coast. Inside water, southeasterlies 15 to 20 knots to 25 knots there for northern Lynn Canal, 5-foot seas. And then looking ahead to Tuesday, gales come back into the picture here, all from the southeast at 35 knots with 15 to 16-foot seas. So pretty uniform wind pattern shaping up for Tuesday out here along the coast, and small craft advisories over the inner channels from southeast at Clarence Strait to northerlies at 25 for Lynn Canal. And for Prince William Sound tomorrow, southeast at about 20, easterlies roughly 15 knots for northern Cook Inlet, small craft advisories south of the Forelands here, all the way down across Shelikof Strait at 25 knots. And we've got 30 knot southerlies there for Kodiak Island up across the Barrens and the western North Gulf Coast, and then lightening to 20 knots there for the east side. And then for Tuesday, east winds 50 knots for Kodiak Island, although Shelikof Strait out of the northeast at 45, and northeast increasing to 45 knots for Kachemak Bay and Kamishak Bay. And easterlies coming up to 50 knots. Probably for the North Gulf Coast here, those 50-knot winds won't develop or come up to 50 knots until late in the afternoon. Northeasterlies increasing to 25 for Prince William Sound. And for Bristol Bay tomorrow, south 20 knots. Same thing here for the Alaska Peninsula. Then from Cape Sarachev all the way up to Sitkinak, we've got small craft advisories for those southerlies at 25 to 30. And then for Tuesday, storm force winds here across the entire area from east at 50 for Bristol Bay, turning northeast 50 here for the Alaska Peninsula. Easterlies at 55 knots into the afternoon and toward evening there from Sitkinak to Castle Cape. And for the eastern Aleutians, southeasterlies 20 to 30 knots out in this area, to easterly at 40 knots there for the western Aleutians, and then minimum gales here for Adak and Atka, more out of the east and southeast. Then for Tuesday, those winds turn north to northeast, 25 to 30 knots for the western Aleutians, northeast at about 30 there for Adak and Atka with 9 to 13 foot seas. Then some good gales shaping up here for the Fox Islands, northeast at 40. For the southwest coast tomorrow, west to southwesterlies, pretty light, 10 to 15 knots actually here, with light northerlies for St. Lawrence Islands, north at about 20 there for the St. Matthew Island marine zone, and the Pribilofs southeast roughly at about 15. And then on Tuesday, light winds here for St. Lawrence Island at about 10 knots, but small craft and brisk wind advisories there for the southwest coast for those northeast winds at 25 to 30. 30-knot northeasterlies there for the Pribilofs, small craft advisories for the northern Bering Sea. For the Arctic coast, central and east side, easterlies at 20 knots, and we've got some brisk wind advisories here for the west side, but westerlies at 15 there from Wales to Cape Thompson. And then for Tuesday, pretty light winds south to southwest here on the west side, and west at roughly at about 10. But very light winds predominantly southeast at 10 knots for the eastern coast. And for tonight, this front weakening, lifting northward, precipitation winds diminishing here across south central Alaska. A weakening front edges its way eastward across the panhandle with a little bit of moisture associated with it. That begins to just scatter out into some showers in the north. Look for some clearing down there in the south. Still showers along the North Gulf Coast. Snow showers out here in the west with a band of snow lifting to the Arctic coast. And then on Tuesday, big increase in the wind and rain coming into especially Kodiak Island, the Alaska Peninsula, and that all lifting northward into the afternoon, but pretty fair over the interior, mostly clear over the southeast coast. That's a look at the weather. Thanks for joining us.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.